Now, the search for justice 3 decades after hundreds of thousands died in the killing fields of Cambodia. Our report was produced by the Bureau for International Reporting. The correspondent is Kira Kay.
Cambodian painter Van Nath creates vibrant scenes of his country's rich history and peaceful moments in its lush countryside. But the work he is better known for is darker. It portrays the time he spent under torture and interrogation as a prisoner of the brutal Khmer Rouge regime.
I was arrested December 30, 1977.
Van Nath was targeted for being an artist, a member of the elite, educated class, and therefore, according to the Khmer Rouge, an enemy of the people.
I arrived at the prison at 3 a.m. They measured how tall I am and took pictures of me. I was interrogated, and all around me I could hear other people being beaten, screaming and yelling because of their pain. I did not know then, but these people were taken away.
Taken away to the infamous killing fields by the hundreds of thousands. From 1975 to 1979, the Khmer Rouge presided over one of the most brutal periods in history, marked by mass executions, death by starvation, and forced labor, all in an attempt to create a demented vision of a communist utopia, dreamed up and carried out by Pol Pot and his cadres.
Everywhere you go, you see massacre, you see skull. Just like a broken glass, when you drop a glass on the floor and broken, it's what we are.
Yuk Chang runs the Documentation Center of Cambodia, which is dedicated to collecting proof of the atrocities that engulfed his nation. An archive of thousands of photographs, documents, and interviews that provide the body of evidence that might one day convict those responsible for the deaths of an estimated 2 million people, around a quarter of the entire population. Now, 3 decades later, that day may finally be here. In the dusty outskirts of the capital, Phnom Penh, a shiny new courthouse has been built. It is called the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia, a lofty name with lofty ambitions, to finally bring justice to a country that has yet to see any accounting for crimes they have suffered. By the hundreds, Cambodians from across the country are being bussed in to tour the complex, to see where trials will be held, to understand that the tribunal is really here. It is finally happening.
It is important for me and the Cambodian people because I can see justice inside. As victims and survivors of the regime, we can find some justice through this tribunal.
The tour was sponsored by Yuk Chang's organization.
It's the idea to warm them up, to prepare them for the trial, so that in such a way they will less intimidated, to reduce their fear. Having them see it and hear it, they create their own messages and they can tell their neighbor, I was there, there's a trial.
It is understandable there might be a good deal of disbelief that a tribunal 30 years in the making has finally arrived. It wasn't until 1997 that the Cambodian government was finally willing to commit to holding a trial, in response to a good deal of international pressure. Many top officials in the government and ruling party, including Prime Minister Hun Sen, were themselves once members of the Khmer Rouge. 6 years of bitter negotiation with the United Nations over the structure of the court has resulted in a complicated, jointly run process. Although the UN is represented by a team of international judges, the majority will be Cambodian and could be subject to the influence and pressure of a government that has little tolerance for political opposition.
I think there is a great deal of skepticism among many Cambodians who learn about the court and who know about the court and watch the court. I think that comes from a basic distrust on the part of many Cambodians of the independence of the judicial system.
The weakness of the Cambodian judiciary is a charge the court itself doesn't deny.
Not a little weak, very weak. And I think it was in actual acknowledgement of that fact that the government asked for international assistance.
Helen Jarvis is the chief spokesperson for the court. She says an elaborate system has been developed to ensure this hybrid tribunal keeps up to international standards.
There's a complex formula of voting, which means that any decision has to involve both international and national. It's called a supermajority.
It is a very complicated system, which is one of the things that I think is a concern for those people who are following the court and frankly for those people who are involved in the court. of how the Cambodians and the international players are going to work well together.
The court cannot afford further delays. It is barely funded for a short 3-year mandate, in which it is already likely there will be time for no more than a small, some would say symbolic, handful of prosecutions. Although it may be some time before any indictments are announced, there are around 6 likely defendants well known to the Cambodian public. Pol Pot himself died in 1998, never having seen the inside of a courtroom. But several of his henchmen, the so-called senior leaders of the Khmer Rouge, are still living with utter impunity within Cambodia. Nguyen Che, once second in command, lives modestly but comfortably in a small town near the Thai border. Eng Sary, the former foreign minister of the regime, now lives in a large villa in a wealthy neighborhood of Phnom Penh. He is well known about town.
He hang out on the street, drinking fruit shakes on the streets. He bought land. He have his son make deputy governor, and he have all of this, to secure his life. That after all this happened, he want to have a good life. He destroy our family but preserve his own.
So far, only 2 Khmer Rouge leaders have ever been arrested. Comrade Doik, who ran the torture prison where painter Van Nath was kept, was discovered in 1999, living under a new identity as an aid worker in a refugee camp. The only other senior leader taken into custody was military commander Ta Mok, known as the Butcher. Just weeks ago, the 80-year-old fell into a coma and died, denying the tribunal what many expected would be its first case. Indeed, it is this race against time that survivors like Van Nath worry may be the biggest challenge to the success of the court. He himself is suffering from kidney disease and fears that justice so delayed may not end up being justice at all.
I have a little hope that we will get a good result from the court, but we have no other choice. We have waited, and so we will keep waiting. But I don't know if I will live long enough to see the justice.
We know that every day there's a possibility that possible defendants die, that people who have been waiting for justice for a long time also die before they get to see this happen, even if they're not directly involved in the trial themselves. We know that physical sites have been lost and will continue to be lost, but at least there has been time for documentation.
Despite these deep concerns and significant challenges, Cambodians themselves do seem to largely support the trials, perhaps knowing that as time passes, there are increasingly few other options left for justice. This is Tuol Sleng, once a middle school that was turned into the very torture center that Van Nath somehow survived, one of only 7 of the more than 14,000 Cambodians imprisoned here. The prison is now a museum dedicated to the building's bloody history. Here, as in so many other places you go in this country, it is easy to find someone who suffered at the hands of the Khmer Rouge and who sees the trial as some sort of closure.
When I come here, I am reminded of what Pol Pot did to me and the whole country. I want to see this tribunal happen quite soon, because I want to see the people who committed these crimes face the law.
In these halls, Van Nath's paintings now hang as a witness to the technical realities of torture, meant to remind and educate a younger generation, those too young to have been alive when the Khmer Rouge held the country in its grips. With almost 70% of the Cambodian population under the age of 30, it is perhaps this final chance at historical record and national dialogue, even if imperfect, that supporters of the court say may be its greatest legacy.
Any form of tribunal would not bring back what we have lost. Any kind. You can have the purest international tribunal, have the most intelligent lawyers in the world. It won't bring back 2 million lives. It won't be able to restore what has been broken. But the process to understand, to see, to hear, and to discuss this openly, I think that to me that's the most important.
Van Nath agrees and says that any pain he may have to relive will be worth the chance at justice.
For me, the trauma is not hearing again of the crimes. For me, the trauma would be if there were no trials at all. And if they ask me to testify, I will contribute before I die, for the soul of those who were killed by the Khmer Rouge.